All right, so you all should have your school action planning guide printed out, and hopefully you've been able to work on this as we've been going through the material. But if not, you can take time over the next few days or weeks to go over this and start to think about what next steps you want to take to get into the farm to school market. And it might be something really small, like, in module one, we talked about getting to know school markets. So it might just be that you want to reach out to your food service director and talk to them about what they might be interested in. Or you already have that relationship with the food service director, or you've met them before. And so you want to take the next step and start to talk to them about maybe what price points they can pay. So it's going to kind of depend on where you're at, but we're just going to go through some of the action planning pieces. Okay, just wanted to make sure that there wasn't anything wrong with the PowerPoint in the chat. So, um, our learning objectives throughout the training were reviewed every session that we did, and those learning objectives are also in your little action planning guide under each module. But action planning, we use it to identify our motivations and goals, our next steps, resources, and contacts for successfully entering or expanding into school markets. And so hopefully a lot of the people that have presented these past 3 days will be able to be a resource and a contact to you to help you fulfill your action plan. So talking about this conclusion, we're going to go into two different pieces. One will be the business action planning, which is what I'm really going to focus on. And then the second piece is more important to the National Farm to School Network. Since they created this curriculum, they ask if you'd be willing to do a post survey, and I'll put that in the chat, and we'll probably just do that on our own, not during the webinar. So I'll also send it out over email so you all can complete that if you want to. Okay, so to get a recap of what we went through, we had a really busy 3 days. We went over lots of material, and it's okay if you're feeling overwhelmed. I know that when I first started in this job and had no experience with farm to school, I felt really overwhelmed just by all of the different requirements and the different ways that people do farm to school. And so if you're feeling that way too, just know that you are not the only one, that I have been there. All of us that work in farm to school have been there. And that's just part of the process of, getting into a new market. It's just like anything else, whether you have sold at farmers markets, or maybe you sell to creation gardens, there's a learning curve. So that's why we have this training. And all of these modules were recorded and will be put on YouTube. I didn't get a chance today to get module 2 and 3 uploaded, but my goal for tomorrow is to get them all uploaded so that you all can access them. So if you weren't able to come to one of them, or you just need to review some of the material, you can do that. And I will also send out all of the PowerPoints so you have access to all those too. So just to review, module 1, we talked about getting to know school markets. That was our day 1 module where we heard from Miranda Pierce from Bowling Green Independent Schools, and she did a really good job of telling us about the different pieces that school food service directors have to think about when serving food. And so we focused a lot on thinking about how much money they have to spend, what are the different requirements in terms of nutrition pieces. And so it was really great to hear from Miranda, and I think you all appreciated having somebody who's directly doing the work, getting to ask her questions and all that. So yesterday we talked about selling to school markets, and that was with Jackie Walters, who was a food service director herself previously. And so we went in a little bit more into the details about how to make that happen. So we talked about micro purchasing, we talked about responding to solicitations. And I think the key point from module 2 is that micro purchases can be done at most schools, although some do have policies in place that don't allow them to do micro purchases, but that is for up to $10,000. So if you're just starting, that is a great place to start. And most schools do their farm to school purchases through micro purchasing. So even if the bid process seemed really overwhelming, there's a good chance that you might not have to even deal with that, because if you're just selling through micro purchasing, you won't have to go through the bid process. Then, of course, if you want to do something like where you're selling to the schools every week or on a more consistent basis, then there's potential that you might have to do something with the bid process. But hopefully, Jackie went over yesterday about how to really differentiate yourself. Hopefully, that was helpful and would help you to respond to a bid if that was something you wanted to do. And then we wrapped up yesterday evening with product development for school markets with Olivia Vogel from the Kentucky Center for Ag and Rural Development. And we thought through what products might be good to sell into schools, ones that we're doing ourselves or ones that we could potentially do in the future. And then today, we had Savannah talk about growing for school markets, and she went into some of the crop production or crop planning pieces and enterprise budgets. And if today was really interesting to you and you want to know more, I put some links in the chat and I'll also send them out. Last year, like Savannah mentioned, we did two whole webinars, one exclusively on enterprise budgets for farm to school and one on crop planning for farm to school. And even though those are focused on farm to school, they're great topics for any market that you're selling into. So they're really great webinars that you can watch anytime because they're on YouTube. So getting into our action planning, like I said, I hope that you all have been able to take some time to think about what action steps you want to take. And if you haven't gotten a chance to look at your action planning guide yet, this is kind of what it looks like. So you can think about the short-term strategies that you need to take, what action steps you want to take, which that's what I was talking about. Like maybe your next step for module 1 is that you just want to talk to the food service director. Or like Olivia showed us yesterday, you might want to go and look up the menu items on your local school's menu for meals to see what products you might be able to do. And then, of course, we know that, at least I know this is true of myself, I like to have a timetable or a timeline in terms of when I set goals, because otherwise I keep putting it off and it never happens. So that part is just to kind of help you think about when you're going to accomplish those things and making your own deadline. And I will say that, and I think Miranda talked a little bit about this on Monday or Tuesday rather, right now is a really great time to talk to your food service director for next year. You could even potentially do something this spring as kind of like a pilot. And then, some of them are already starting to think about planning for next year. So now is a great time to reach out to your food service director. And so that's, you might want to think about that in terms of your timeline, like maybe in the next few weeks, you want to reach out to your food service director. And we're not going to do this piece because I think I don't want to take more of your all's time. And I think you can do a lot of this on your own. But if you are wanting some help with your action planning guide, feel free to reach out to me or any of the presenters that talked over the past few days, and we'd be more than happy to help connect you with any resources or just help you think through what you want to do. And we do have some food service directors that have offered to be like a person that you all can call and ask questions. And so when I send out the follow-up email tomorrow, I'll include some key farm to school contacts in there. And so even if that food service director, let's say like somebody on there is Dalla Emerson and Bowling Green, so like maybe that's not doable for you, she'd be more than happy to just talk through with you some farm to school pieces and even potentially connect you with a food service director that she knows that might be closer to you. And of course, myself, Tina Garland, who's on the call, anybody that's working with farm to school can also help you with that. So getting into the evaluation piece, this is what I mentioned. This is what the National Farm to School Network asks us to do. So they created this curriculum and they are doing some evaluation of it to try and make sure that It's fulfilling the needs of farmers, and so this curriculum is being used all across the United States. We kind of adapted it to Kentucky and made some pieces more specific to us, but they still want to evaluate the curriculum, and kind of the main base of the curriculum that we use is from them. So I'll type in the chat here in a second the post training survey link, and I'll also send it out. They just ask that you do this. Of course, it is optional, just like the other surveys. And if you do choose to do it, they will follow up with you in 6 months to a year and ask you to do another survey, which I think is going to ask you more about like, did you in fact go and sell to schools and try to see if this training helped you do that. And so with that, that is all that we have this evening.